Sammy.
You go, girl. You go, girl.
There's our baby.
Yeah.
Oh, so pretty.
She is. She's had a rough day today.
Why is that?
Well, she's had to be home most of the day herself, and
Oh, she's with Sierra.
she has her friend, her big sister's with her. Sammy hasn't been walked yet today, so she's got a lot of energy, and we're going to take her out shortly, see if she can do 3 miles.
No, we don't do 3. We do
2.
about 2 these
See if
days.
she can-
I'm Sue.
And I'm Steve, and we're aging joyfully.
Trying to with this crazy puppy we have.
Yes, she is gotten out of control. She hasn't been on extended walk yet today, so she has a lot of energy, and we're about to go out for a walk.
We are.
Maybe about 2 miles.
She's almost 11 months now.
She is. Look at her. She's so pretty. She really does not like her big ears to be brushed. But we still do it.
Yeah, this hair by her ears looks scraggly a lot of times.
Mangy.
Hey. What's up with you? Are you saying you want to do a thumbs up? Are you saying you want to do a thumbs up?
Thumbs up. Look at that. Thumbs up.
She's pushing it way up. Up.
Yep.
Lots of thumbs up, and please subscribe. It's free.
And hit notifications.
And today we're going to talk about issues in aging.
Yes.
Older people have a lot of concerns, don't they, Steve?
Oh, man, I'll tell you, there are a lot of issues as you get older. There's a lot of issues that happen. Some good, some not so good. Most of them, I guess, not so good. Because as your body breaks down, you tend to have more areas that hurt, more pain. You seem to be sensitive to a lot of different things you weren't sensitive to. There seems to be a lot of things that you're more sensitive to now than you were in the past.
Like what?
Well, some foods that you can't eat, you may get indigestion faster, sooner with different foods that you used to enjoy, but you can't eat. I had manicotti the other day, and I haven't had manicotti in a long time. And, oh, God, it just hurt so bad. Had such bad indigestion.
I know, I see on a lot of videos with older people that they say they eat just a very limited diet. And people we know, they just have a very, very limited diet. They find the foods they can eat, and they just stick with those few limited foods.
Yeah, fruit and produce mostly.
Well, no.
Chicken.
I think a lot of bread, something that has to fill you up. Maybe some meat or bread. Fruit and vegetables don't tend to fill you up. They usually leave you hungry. So I know a lot of older women. My father used to always say when they were left alone, they would just make cookies or have cake for dinner because it wasn't worth it to make a meal, and it was just them. So they'd have something sweet for dinner. But today we're going to talk about another concern that older people have, and that is dying. As you get older, you think about dying and your mortality. But do you ever think about dying alone? Where you're going to die, if it's going to be a hospital, hospice, or if it's going to be alone. And if it is alone, are you going to end up like Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy? That has been the most talked about thing for the last month, hasn't it?
It sure has. And even though Gene Hackman had a lot of money when he passed away, they basically died alone. I mean, he died in the kitchen, and she died upstairs. And you would think that there would be caretakers, there would be lawn people, house cleaners.
Was she upstairs? Because I think they looked in the window and saw her. So I don't know if she was upstairs. I got the impression it was a ranch or the bedroom was downstairs, because I believe it was their hired help. The guy who would come and do odd jobs looked in the window and said he saw her body. I believe that's what. I mean, there's been several different versions.
Yes.
But I don't think I think she was in the bathroom.
Okay.
And I didn't know he was in the kitchen, but you said you read he was in the kitchen. There's been a lot of different versions.
Right.
But the fact is, he had $80 million and severe dementia or Alzheimer's. I'm not sure which one he had.
It was dementia.
Severe dementia.
And he had a pacemaker.
Yeah, and the thing is, everybody asked why when he died, the pacemaker didn't alert the company. That is bizarre.
Right.
I didn't understand that.
Right.
But also,
Right.
Betsy did everything from cooking for him, grocery shopping. They had no help at all, it appears, except for this maintenance man who repaired things or sprayed the house or whatever he did. So I was shocked there was no cook, there was no housekeeper, there was no medical help. That's a lot for one person to undertake.
Yeah, especially at that age. You know, he was, what, 95?
Yeah, I mean, she was 65, but it's a lot to take care of. And as somebody with severe dementia who has to be watched at all times, as they could get into any danger. Their house, I believe, was 9,000 square feet. So there's a lot of potential dangers. And then if he wanders around outside, they probably had several acres. I don't think it ever said how much land, but they did have some land because their neighbors were not close by.
Right, and it was in New Mexico and Santa Fe area, and that can be pretty rural once you get into the high country there.
Well, I believe they were in a neighborhood or subdivision, but they had huge lots,
Right.
So it was very private. So they weren't close with, say, their neighbors. Didn't have hired help. Their kids, his kids, were estranged. She didn't have any children. She called her mother, who was, I think, in her 90s as well. She would call her periodically, and I think she might have had some dementia or some condition as well. I don't know if she had any siblings or anybody, because she was dead for 2 weeks, I believe.
Wow.
And then he died a week later, and it's very, very concerning.
Yeah, when you get older, I mean, there's a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of preparation that should happen as you get older, to take care of your burial or whatever you're going to do with your remains, and who's going to be in charge of that.
Well, they didn't really mention that, but they did mention the will that she had written her. Well, they wrote the wills 30 years ago. That's the first thing. That's way too long ago. His children were not mentioned at all in the wills. But she mentioned that if she, if she died first, everything went to Gene. But if he was already gone, it would go to charities. And he wrote that everything of his went to her. So technically she died first. So that would mean all her things went to Gene. Then he died. Then there was nobody for his assets to go to. So his son is contesting the will, and because of the way it was written, he could very well win, because they would probably go after family members. Every state is different. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but it seems like he has a good shot of contesting it, right? I mean, he didn't write in his will that it should go to charity if he died. Secondly, everybody thought because she's 30 years younger that, of course, that he would go first. But I have often read that caretakers of people with any severe illness, the caretakers often die first because it's such a stressful job.
Yeah, you can just imagine what it's like, taking care of somebody who's 95 years old and has dementia with a pacemaker. I can just imagine how hard that would be.
Well, there's so many concerns. I mean, what I've read is people with dementia forget to drink. Our neighbor actually was in the hospital for about a week because he has dementia. He would forget to drink, and then he had to go to rehabilitation. And then I've read that you lose the ability. Some people lose the ability to remember how to swallow, and so if you don't swallow, you can't drink. And there's just so many concerns. They could get lost. Our neighbor would walk in the neighborhood, and I always thought, I don't know how he does that with dementia. How is he not getting lost walking in the neighborhood?
Right.
But yeah, it is very, very, very concerning. So she had her hands full, and then it was a pretty bizarre circumstances that she died of, that highly unusual. Yeah. What was it called again?
I don't remember what it was
some virus
called.
from mouse droppings.
droppings.
It was very rare. Only, 7 people had it in the last year or something, and only maybe 3 died or something. It was very, very unusual to get that. And you're thinking, they said it was from outbuildings. It wasn't in the house. why is she maintaining the outbuildings or what was in these outbuildings
Right.
after having 9,000 square feet? You would think it would be lawn equipment. I mean, it's just bizarre that she got this unusual virus. I mean, you would think she's in the house taking care of G most of the time, that she's not in these outbuildings. So it was very interesting, but it made so many seniors aware of our mortality and how are we going to die? Are we going to die alone? And if that happened to us, that we died together, and then their poor dog. Of course, that was the saddest thing. They had 3 dogs, but
that'd be the saddest.
But one passed away from starvation, dehydration, because it was in a cage. And you think of poor Sammy and Sierra, our 14-year-old dog. She, well, we're assuming she'll be gone before us because she is turning 14 in this month.
Right. But she's got a lot of energy.
She sure does. I can barely even walk her. She's so strong and powerful. She just pulls. Yeah. But we're not dying in the next few years, so we assume she'll be gone. But Sammy will be with us for the next 15 years or so. So you do think if something like that happened, what would happen to Sammy? You know?
Yeah, who would take Sammy?
Well, I'm talking about what happened to Jean's dog.
Right.
That the dog passed away. Because if we both died in our house, who would be checking on us?
Yeah.
Who would be checking on you? I know I've read of bizarre cases in the past where people have been dead for years. Like one woman had her bills on auto pay, and the grass started growing. The neighbors actually started cutting her grass for whatever reason, which to me is a red flag right there. But once she ran out of money in her bank, it was years. They finally found her body because she ran out of money. And you just think, how bizarre. Now, when one of my uncles died, my aunt died first, and when he died, they had 8 kids, and they didn't find his body for many days. I remember thinking how terribly sad that was because the oldest son was on vacation, and I don't know if he was the one who kept in touch with him. I don't know if the other kids called once a week or what happened, but I remember thinking how sad that he was in that house for, I think it was like 5 days before they found him. And, he lived alone after my aunt died. So, and I don't remember the statistics, but I'll try to put it on the screen. But how many people over 65 live alone? The numbers are exploding. It's so many people over 65 because of gray divorces or divorces earlier or deaths or whatever. There are so many people living alone over 65, and the over 65 age group is just exploding with all the boomers reaching 65.
Right.
So it is a big concern. Now, somebody said on one of these websites that there's a service that you can text to check in every day.
Right.
And you could say the time, like, I'm going to check in every day by 12. And if you don't check in, then you have emergency numbers that they will contact.
Right.
So I didn't look into that, but that is something to look into. I mean, right now, Steve's working, so they would miss him at work. So we wouldn't be laying there for 2 weeks because they'd be saying, where's Steve? They wouldn't be saying, hey, Steve hasn't shown up for 2 weeks, right? But other than that, I mean, I talked to my sister, one of my sisters. I have 7 siblings, and we talk weekly. What? You don't talk to your brothers that often?
Nope.
So, I don't know. Is that common? I mean, I know I just read a book on, it was like, what was it? I've been reading a lot of books lately. It was something about aging and aging in your house, and it said you should have 5 contacts to be able to help you if you were to fall or need to go to the hospital and have somebody watch Sammy. You should have 5 people who can help you. Do you have 5 people to help you?
Five people.
I don't think we have 5. I don't think we have. I mean, first of all, you could have 100 friends, but how many of them are really going to help you step up when you need your dog watched?
Yeah. Exactly. Fed and walked and everything else.
Well, taken care of. Or even just drop off at the kennel. There's very few people. I mean, everybody's so overwhelmed with their own lives. I don't think neighbors would just step up and do that. So,
well, it depends. I mean, if you live in a close-knit neighborhood, then maybe that is possible, but that's not our situation. Well, maybe that's yours.
We moved so many times, and then we moved during COVID this last time. And people were isolated, so we didn't meet a lot of people. But even my cousin, who's lived in the same house her whole marriage, over 30 years, she said, but no, you don't have people assume you're going to have all those connections. She said people have moved, people have died, people got divorced, and you had to choose sides. So no, she said she doesn't have all those connections after being in the same house 30 years. The situation around you changes. So it's not like, oh, if you stayed in the same house, you have all these friends. If you go to the same church, I've heard of a lot of churches, we're in Georgia, I've heard of a lot of churches kicking elderly people out because they're very poor and don't have a lot of money. And some of the churches are after money. And I've heard of them discouraging elderly people who had no money to give from the weekly tithe after the church had switched to younger people and new minister, pretty much asking the older people no longer to come. I know people would be shocked by that, but I have read the stories of that.
I think that's sad. Church is more than a place to just donate money.
Well, I understand. I mean, it is like a business. It's run like a business, and if everybody's elderly and doesn't have money,
Especially when you're elderly and you go to church for your salvation, then it's, I know everything costs money these days.
well, to operate the church, you need.
Understood, but you can afford to have some people who don't pay anything, and the church still goes on.
Yeah, it's just when you get a church. Well, so many churches did go. So many churches foreclosed during the Great Recession because people couldn't afford to give anymore, and they didn't have money. So when you get to the point where you have less people
Well, I
giving,
understand. Yeah, I understand that, but if you have 1, 2, 3, or 4 out of a congregation of 100 and something, if you have a congregation of 50 and you have 1, 2, 3, or 4, then maybe you have an issue. But other than that,
I just read these. And I don't know the case personally, but I mean, I can believe it because a church is run like a business. I know we lived next to a mega church in Alabama when we lived there years ago. And one day the minister's wife invited me to lunch, and the head minister, there were several different layers of ministers because it was a mega church. But the head minister's wife invited me to lunch, and I thought, because our 2 sons were in the same grade, in the same class, school, I thought she just wanted to get to know me. Well, she starts... she takes me to lunch and she offered to pay. I was like, you don't need to pay for my lunch. And she said, well, we're trying to recruit you to become members at our church. And I was like, what? Because we were not that religion. They actually came after us because they knew what our house cost. So she actually told me that they had gone after us because they knew what our house cost. And this was
targeted us.
When Steve was in the prime of his career. I'm not sure if we've mentioned in previous videos, but if you look at Social Security incomes, up to 49 is your highest income. After 49, people make less money. But he was in his prime. He was in his mid-40s. So he was at his top income. And so they targeted us, and I was just appalled. And she actually told me that they hired marketing companies to tell them what to say to get people to tithe and to guilt them into tithing more. And we actually went to church during the holidays because they would have big productions. And one particular time, they sent around the tithe for the 10% tithe, and then they said we're doing a building tithe. They had a lot of people who had been laid off. I think it was around 9/11 when people started losing jobs. And they had people give testimonials that they were giving 10% of their income, which would be zero because they had zero income, but it was 10% of their previous income because they said that was the right thing to do. And I remember thinking, how are you giving 10% when you have zero income? What are you doing, cashing out your retirement? I mean, to me that was irresponsible because they're building a new building. Well, they could slow down on their building or whatever. You can't guilt these people into taking their retirement because now they have no retirement. And they're in their 40s, they're paying the penalty. They're in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, so they were paying the penalty. And they were guilting them, and I remember I was kind of disgusted. And then when she told me that they hired marketing people to go after you and to get you to give money and give more money, and they knew what words to say, I got a little turned off by that. And I'm not saying all churches do this. There's a lot of good churches out there, but I'm just saying this always stayed in my mind. That was over 20 years ago, and I've never forgotten that they do this. I've never forgotten that she told me this. She told me this. I didn't ask. She just came out and told me that they targeted us, and they were targeting people and guilting people.
Wow. Yeah.
So
hard to believe.
So yeah, money. Money
talks.
Money changes people. Money changes people, and I wonder why do you think Betsy never hired help?
I don't know. I don't know why they didn't have help. gardeners at least.
Well,
or
I think they had groundskeeper because she didn't cut the grass. She wasn't cutting. As far as I know, I mean, I think the guy who found them was the all-around maintenance groundskeeper. I think he was the only person, because he said she was a sweetheart. He knew her. He was devastated, but I'm talking about inside help, the cooks, the laundry,
the laundry alone,
and maybe just sitting with Jean so she could get a break. I mean, that's when we went to volunteer at the senior center. They wanted us to every week help with the people with Alzheimer's who get dementia and Alzheimer's who get dropped off, who as a break to their caregivers. And for us, it was like a big step for our first step. Anyway, I'm saying to have somebody relieve her of that tremendous stress. I mean, he had to have it. Usually you have it, I think anywhere, you can have it 10 to 20 years. I mean, he was 95. Right. He probably had it 15, 20 years. Right. They're married 30
maybe
years.
Even longer.
He probably had it 2/3 of their marriage. Are you going to die alone?
Yes.
Do you have plans?
Who's going to take care of if you have dogs or cats or fish or guinea pigs? Who's going to take care of those?
Well, we don't really have those plans ourselves. We don't have that.
We're kind of working on it right now. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, we're working on what we should have done years ago, but we're like everybody else procrastinating. I mean, Gene didn't update his will. Gene Hackman didn't update his will for 30 years. I've been told we should update every 5 years.
Right.
I mean, things change. People die. If people you're leaving it to die, or
relationships change.
Yeah, circumstances change. So, I don't know. But as to dying alone, I mean,
can happen.
Well, my mother died first, and she died in the hospital, and then my father, well, he died in hospice. So neither were alone. But let's see, when your mother died, did she die alone? You know, I think or did she go to the hospital?
Died in the hospital.
No, it's just shocking to think about as you age that that our country has lost its sense of community. Other societies value older people, like the Japanese, Asian, or who else? Well, mostly Asian. Value their elderlies. They revere them. They look up to them. They like their wisdom. Our particular country that thinks once you're over 49 to kick you to the curb.
That's it.
Which Social Security statistics show that most companies want to get rid of you at 49. And Steve, my father, and my brother all lost their jobs at 49. My thought on that is health insurance must really go up so much at 50 that companies want you gone at 49. That's my theory on that. The cost of, it's all about dollars and cents. So it is sad that we're not respected. But no, we don't really have any plans in place. I mean, because anything could happen at any time. So no, we don't have any plans.
Sam.
We don't have any plans in place, do we, Sammy? I think Sammy would bark loudly enough that the neighbors would probably complain if we were dead and she's in the house. She'd be barking. You could hear it. You could hear it in the yard. She's so loud.
Yep.
I think she would alert the neighbors.
Yeah, she's a princess.
That we are gone, and they'd be calling the police for a wellness check. That's what I believe would happen.
Yeah. Sammy's a princess. She doesn't get her food on time or get walked or played with. She's on it.
Whereas Sierra was never much of a barker. So she'd just be quiet if something happened.
She'd be quiet and die.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad, isn't it, Sammy? Is that sad? But anyway, we've been busy with all of our usual household things. It seems like, I don't know, I think we're moving slower as we age, and we're doing less and less. I mean, I feel like we're busy every day.
Yeah.
I feel like we're busy with maintaining the house, and Steve had the cataract surgery, and I don't know, keeping up with just our health checks.
Yep.
Our preventative health checks. We're pretty healthy, and those preventative things are taking up a lot of time. As you get older, they want to check more and more.
Yeah, it's important. It's important, and also that you have somebody with you when you go to doctor's visits, so that you're not falling for some of this. Just take this pill, or just have this X-ray done, or it's important, because sometimes, doctors will go way out of their way to medicate you, or to have certain x-rays done, just to eliminate different things. And it's important, but, sometimes it's overkill.
Well, I watch a doctor who gives you advice for people over 65. I put his name down below. I believe it's Dan, like DHAND. He's excellent. He's in his 40s, I believe. And he discusses people in their 60s being on 10 to 15 medications and how they all interact and cause conditional problems like potentially falling and actually having signs like you have dementia, because they interact and take away your cognitive ability. Mm-hmm. So I watch him and keep up with him, and he gives advice on all kinds of things. So he's an excellent guy to watch. He's an internist. Yeah. So we try to do things. Try to be preventative. We try to think ahead, but that's not always possible. Right now, I'm working on a notebook since I pay all the bills. I'm working on a notebook on what bills need to be paid and where you can find passwords. That's another issue, is that so much money is lost each year because the kids remaining don't know all your passwords and things like that. So that's an issue. So I'm working on that Steve knows all of our passwords, but I pay all the bills, so he's not always aware of all that. So I'm working on that.
It's getting tougher and tougher to remember the passwords. Yeah. There's different passwords for different things, and now the passwords have gotten more complicated. Can't be 1, 2, 3, 4 anymore. And ABC, so now it's gotten complicated and a little bit harder to remember. But that's why you have things like LastPass and 1Password, so that it remembers for you, and then that's encrypted so that people can't get into that.
I'm going to put some links of some of our videos that are really worth watching in the description, so check those out. And if you enjoyed today's video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe and share it with your friends. We talk about all different kinds of issues in aging, don't we?
We sure do. And so make sure you also click notifications so you're notified when a new video comes out. And you know what? Just watch us, because we talk about different things. It's not scripted, as you can tell. And Sammy usually has a big part in the videos. It depends on how aggressive she is that day.
Well, Sammy actually does enjoy this. She actually does enjoy this, but I think she wants to go on a walk right now. Yeah. I think she's got a lot of energy. And
nothing that 2 miles won't kill.
So we're going to get going, and you check those out. Until we see you again,
take it easy.